brought to you by That Security Company. It is the 11th of September, 8:30 in the morning, and today I'm your host, Rich Benfield, covering Stephen Ridgway, who's on annual leave. So, let's take a look at the cyber news today. We have evil Telegram Android app on the Google Play Stores infected 60k with spyware. Google rolls out a privacy sandbox to use Chrome browsing history for ads. Microsoft Teams has phishing attacks, which pushes Darkgate malware. And we also have unpatched Cisco ASA flaws exploited by attackers. And in a bumper edition, we have a couple of bonuses, which are, where are we? GPU exploits in graphic design software. And my browser has just hung for a second. So that is it. Okay, so back to the top. Evil Telegram Android apps on Google Play infected 60k with spyware. So there's been several malicious Telegram clones on the Google Play Store for Android, and they were sort of combined installed over 60,000 times. And they're infecting people with spyware that steals messages, contact lists, and other data. So these apps do appear to be tailored for Chinese-speaking users. And it does suggest that there's possible ties to state monitoring and repression mechanisms. So these apps were actually discovered by Kaspersky, who reported them to Google. However, at the time, the researchers published their report. Several malicious apps are still available for download through Google Play. The Telegram apps presented in Kaspersky's report are promoted as faster alternatives to the regular app. The examples shown in the report have over 60,000 installs, so the campaign has moderate success in reaching a pool of potential targets. So the app is ostensibly the same as the original Telegram, but just contains additional functions in the code to steal data. Now, I don't think that we're going to be at much risk in the West. These appear to be limited to the Chinese marketplace, the Google Play Store. So I think we're going to be okay. But it does bear saying that when you're installing an app, no doubt you've seen it before in the Android Play Store, where you're looking for one app and there's multiple with very similar names. So just for your own safety, do check that you're installing an app from the correct or expected publisher. I know that's not 100% foolproof, but it's one of the things you can do that just keep yourself a bit more protected. Moving on, Google rolls out Privacy Sandbox to use Chrome browsing history for ads. So Google has started to roll out its new interest-based advertising platform called the Privacy Sandbox. And it's shifting away from cookies, essentially, to managing it within the Chrome browser itself. So you've probably seen it if you're a Chrome user already. But when you start the Chrome browser, you'll get an alert up that says Enhanced Ad Privacy in Chrome that briefly describes the new ad platform. And it says something like, "We're launching new privacy features that give you more choice over the ads you see," reads the new Chrome alert. Chrome notes topics of interest based on your recent browsing history. Also, sites you visit can determine what you like. Later sites can ask for this information to show you personalized ads, and you can choose which topics and sites are used to show you ads. So, here's the thing with this. It is not mandatory that you use it, okay? You don't have to turn it on. It's supposed to be what comes next after cookies. It's supposed to replace cookies. But if you turn this on now, surely you're just giving away twice the metrics to allow for twice the amount of targeting adverts, because cookies haven't been discontinued yet. You know, there's this period of time where you've got both going on at once. So it's a bit interesting to see how this shift happens. I mean, obviously with the full weight of Google behind it, you're gonna find that it's gonna get implemented whether you want it or not. Basically, you know, they say don't be evil or whatever their motto was, but it's not beyond the realms for them to arbitrarily change things however they want. Okay, same as anyone else when you're using their software. But right now, you're going to have cookies on, and the Privacy Sandbox. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the coming months. Next, moving on. Microsoft Teams phishing attack pushes Darkgate malware. A new phishing campaign is abusing Microsoft Teams messages to send malicious attachments that install the Darkgate loader malware. So this campaign actually started in late August of this year, when Teams phishing messages were seen being sent by compromised external Office 365 accounts to other organizations. These accounts were used to trick other Microsoft Teams users into downloading and opening a zip file named Changes to the Vacation Schedule. Yeah. So I do have a screenshot here. Links will be posted in the social media. But essentially, it looks like a phishing email just in Teams. So not massively sophisticated on what the user sees. But of course, people don't expect that Teams is going to be compromised because everyone's used to phishing emails. So if you're running any sort of phishing awareness campaign, it's important to bear in mind that things are moving on slightly. And although the body text might look the same as a phishing email, so you might recognize it, it's easy for the users to be spun out a bit by receiving it in a different channel to the norm. So that does sort of increase the odds that they might click something ridiculous, especially as a lot of people use Teams in a single org environment and aren't used to switching orgs and receiving Teams stuff from other orgs necessarily. You know, depends how you use Teams. Your mileage may vary after all, but basically, this zip file sits in a SharePoint URL and contains a link to a file masquerading as a PDF document. So researchers at TrueSec analysed the Microsoft Teams phishing campaign and found that it contains malicious VB script that triggers the infection chain that leads to a payload identified as the Darkgate loader. To try and evade detection, the download process utilizes Windows CURL to fetch, or curl, to fetch the malware's executable and script files. The script arrives pre-compiled, hiding its malicious code in the middle of the file, beginning with distinguishable magic bytes associated with auto IT scripts. Before proceeding further, the script checks if the Sophos antivirus software is installed on a targeted machine, and if it's not, it I can't even say this word, deobfuscates, it's a bit early for that, additional code and launches the shell code. So it's actually, as silly as it sounds, quite a well-crafted piece of spyware. And there's plenty more technical information in this particular article that we'll post, including, again, screenshots. File hashes are on there, which may be useful for you. And hopefully you guys will all be okay out there who are using Teams. But, you know, a bit of knowledge always helps. Oh, incidentally, that Darkgate malware has been circulating since 2017. And but it's only been used in a limited sense by a small circle of cyber criminals who used it against very specific targets. It's quite a potent malware, and it supports a wide range of malicious activities, including HVNC for remote access, crypto mining, reverse shell, key logging, clipboard stealing, and information stealing, files and browser data. So it can do quite a lot. So it's very important that you take steps to address phishing within Teams, if you can, but also to be aware of the sort of malware floating around. Okay, and Darkgate is an interesting one because it is quite powerful, so it's worth reading up on. Next, email forwarding flaws. Oh no, that's boring. Forget that. Basically, it just allows you to impersonate high-profile domains. Do you remember back in the day when you could use Telnet to the SMTP port to spoof your domains? Then DMARC and things like that all came in and ruined that fun. Well, I'll just cover this off very briefly because it's not terribly interesting, but there's a flaw in the way that email forwarding works that allows you to also impersonate domains, okay? And it actually bypasses safeguards deployed by Gmail and Outlook. So it is an actual exploit more than just a standard telnet style thing like we used to do in the late 90s just for fun. Okay, so definitely keep an eye on that in the background, but just expect the providers to patch. Speaking of patches, we've got an article from late Friday that says unpatched Cisco ASA flaw is exploited by hackers. Yes, another ASA flaw. That is CVE 2023 20269. So a vulnerability in the Cisco Adaptive Security Appliance, that's ASA for you and I, and the Cisco Firepower Threat Defense Firewall is being exploited by attackers to gain access to vulnerable internet exposed devices. This vulnerability was found during the resolution of a Cisco tax support case, the company noted in a recent published security advisory, and they thanked Rapid7 for reporting attempted exploitation of this vulnerability. So CVE 2023 20269, it affects the remote access VPN feature of ASA and FTD solutions. It might allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to conduct a brute force attack to identify valid username and password combos that can be used to establish an unauthorized remote access VPN session. Or might also allow an authenticated remote attacker to establish a clientless SSL VPN session with an unauthorized user, but only when running Cisco ASA software version 9.16 or earlier. Both approaches require certain conditions to be met, and the vulnerability is due to improper separation of authentication, authorization, and accounting between the remote access VPN feature and the HTTPS management and site-to-site VPN features, Cisco explained. Again, there's a link to Cisco's post on this, so when it goes on the socials, you can check this out. An attacker could exploit this vulnerability by specifying a default connection profile / tunnel group while conducting a brute force attack or while establishing a clientless SSL VPN session using valid credentials. But the company made sure to note that the flaw does not allow attackers to bypass authentication. To successfully establish a remote access VPN session, valid credentials are required, including a valid second factor if multi-factor authentication is configured. Once again, MFA remains a really strong option for securing your accounts. So if you have that, if you have a Cisco ASA and you have MFA configured up for your VPN users, then it's going to obviously be much more difficult to do anything with these exploits. So if you can't patch this straight away, but you have MFA, then you've bought yourself a bit of breathing space. Okay. Right. Now for something quite interesting. Cyber criminals exploit GPUs in graphic design software. I mean, if it hasn't happened already, it was only going to be a matter of time, because obviously, as you know, GPUs are commonly used for cryptocurrency, and that's actually what's happening here. So security researchers at Cisco Talos have uncovered a scheme that preys on graphic designers and 3D modelers, because obviously they're the people with great big GPUs outside of this crypto mining community. So cyber criminals are using those GPUs to mine cryptocurrency via some malware. So according to the advisory published by Cisco Talos last week, this campaign has been active since at least November 2021. Well, it's gone quietly under the radar for a bit, hasn't it? I'm sure it's been mentioned before. The attackers exploit Advanced Installer, which is a legitimate Windows tool for software packaging, to bundle cryptocurrency mining malware with legitimate software like Adobe Illustrator and Autodesk 3ds Max. The reason behind this campaign's focus on graphic design and 3D modeling software, of course, is that they are using these high GPU-powered tools that these mining tools and things demand, and it suits a cyber criminal's cryptocurrency mining needs. These threat actors sort of sneak malicious scripts into the software installation process using Advanced Installer's custom actions feature, enabling them to deploy their threats. Payloads, they include things like the M3 Mini Rack client stub, which creates a backdoor, and cryptocurrency mining malware like Phoenix Miner and LOL Miner, I think it was called. Yeah. So The campaign mainly affects French-speaking users, primarily in France and Switzerland. However, there have been isolated infections in countries including the US, Canada, Algeria, Sweden, Germany, Tunisia, Madagascar, Singapore, and Vietnam. What's interesting about this is that it's kind of niche, as silly as that sounds. You know, not many of us have 3D modeling machines or super high powered machines where we're running AutoCAD or Adobe Illustrator or whatever. So it's very much obviously targeted at those softwares because they're the sort of people that have these high powered GPUs. And that's something that I hadn't expected to see. So obviously, if you are in a video editing or a graphic design sort of role and you have something really, really chunky by way of graphics card, then just be aware that there is a certain risk that that previously might have been a bit unexpected. You know, we hear about machines being hijacked for cryptocurrency, but this is the first time I've personally come across such a targeted sort of industry use, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, interesting one. Anyway, that concludes the cybersecurity briefing for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's been useful. I will be back on tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. with some more news for you. Thanks very much for listening. And as those trendy YouTuber types like to say, like and subscribe, and comments are welcome. And of course, we'll put those links up in the socials so you can do further reading. See you tomorrow. Thanks very much indeed.